Hello, and welcome back to my desk. The last couple of videos on my channel were the overview of the Pendergast series, and at the end of that, because it was so long, I didn't quite get into the newest book in the series, which was Angel of Vengeance, which is kind of the book that set off my whole dive into the Pendergast series. And I had a lot of thoughts. And so this video is not going to be spoiler free. I just want to say that right at the outset. The other videos I tried to keep as spoiler free as possible. I know that as it progressed, there was a lot of kind of unintentional spoilering in the synopses for the videos, but for my part, I tried to just kind of give little points of the key themes I saw in the books and if I would recommend them as someone starting out, which ones to avoid, kind of how they're grouped together. So if you're interested in any of that information, you can go and check out those. I will try and link them in the description. And yeah, so that's kind of more of just hits the points of the books in their order. But this one I wanted to talk about. So Angel of Vengeance was published in August. I'm pretty sure it was August. If it's not, then I'll put a note on the screen that says the actual date of 2024. And it's the newest book in the Pendergast series. It's the wrap-up of a kind of quadrilogy of books that run from the very beginning of the series to the very end. So I will do just... I'll tell you what the book's about in case you don't know. I'm sure if you're here, you probably are familiar with something, or you're just watching my videos because you like them, and I'm glad that you're here in that case anyways. So let's just pop this open and I'll tell you what the book jacket says. A desperate bargain is broken. Constance Green confronts Manhattan's most dangerous serial killer, Enoch Lang, bartering for her sister's life. But she's betrayed and turned away empty-handed, incandescent with rage. A clever trap is set. Unknown to Lang, Pendergast's brother Diogenes appears unexpectedly, offering to help for mysterious reasons of his own. Disguised as a cleric, Diogenes establishes himself in New York's notorious Five Point slum, manipulating events like a chess master, watching Lang's every move, and awaiting his own chance to strike back. A vengeful angel will not be deterred. Meanwhile, Pendergast joined forces with the unstable Constance in her seemingly doomed quest to rescue her siblings from a tragic fate and take savage retribution on Lang. But Lang is one step ahead and has a surprise for them all. So, a lot goes on in this book. In the previous books, we kind of hit in Bloodless, which is 2 books. Not the last book, but the book before that. At the very end of that, we introduced this kind of time travel / alternate universe travel point. And it was kind of... it was like science-based, not magic-based. So there is that. There's kind of, throughout the series, this weird hinting at supernatural otherworldliness that always ends up having some kind of scientific-based solution or explanation. And so in that book, the series does kind of take a pivot kind of hard into that little bit of a sci-fi element, and it was strange. And then in The Cabinet of Dr. Lang, it just becomes a whole thing, and the story really swerves, and you're kind of like, okay, this isn't anything really, like, we've seen it all in this series before. And then at the very end of that book, it seems like all hope is lost, and in walks Diogenes Pendergast. And he was like, I am your angel of vengeance delivered. It's just a very dramatic entrance. And up until that point, I had no idea who Diogenes was, because I hadn't read anything in the series that had him in it before that. And so I was super intrigued, and I was like, okay, before I read the next book, which was supposed to feature him, he's the title character, I need to know his background. And so I went back and read all of the books. And then I got to this one, and I read it, and I did like it. I will say that. I think there was a lot of mixed reviews and reception within the fandom about how people felt about this book, because it was such a culmination of so many kind of storylines coming together that there was so much to pack in, and it's pretty standard size for the books in the Pendergast series. And so it wasn't like longer. And so one of my critiques, I guess, was it could have been longer. I do think that they satisfactorily wrapped up all of the threads they needed to. And so I was pretty happy with it overall. But I know that was like a criticism of not everything was given the attention it was due. And I can absolutely say that that was a fair viewpoint. There was also some criticism of the structure of the book and how it's laid out, which is it's a lot of parallel storylines running at the same time. And so we don't get as much interaction and banter of the characters back and forth as you would have liked, because it's a rare occurrence to have Pendergast and Constance and Diogenes in the same place, interacting together, working towards the same goal against this villain that's kind of the ultimate villain in the story thus far. And so I do think that's also a fair criticism of, you really wanted to see them interacting together, working together more than what we got. I do think that the way it was structured did allow you to kind of get a little bit of a window into the characters alone, but I don't know that that was enough that it kind of justified the way that it was written. I guess they kind of needed to do that because of how they brought everyone together at the end, but I would say also fair criticism. And the most significant criticism I think that I saw, and that I also agree with, was there wasn't enough Diogenes in this book. As I said, he is the title character, the Angel of Vengeance. This is him on the cover. And he does play an integral role in this book, but his screen time is not enough. Like, people who read this series, us the readers, were really rooting for the Diogenes like turnaround. A little bit, you still want him to be who he is, and he still absolutely is, but you really wanted him to be showcased in this book, and we do get to see a little bit of his flair, but I would say ultimately he's not as present as you would have hoped for, given the book is his namesake. So that is also a fair criticism. I will say the way we get to see Diogenes kind of play his masterful role, but kind of on the side of good this time was nice, because you're kind of seeing it in the present tense versus it being revealed to you over a course of time, just how much effort he puts into the elaborateness of his plans. I also know that there was a criticism of the wrap up of his storyline, which isn't 100% wrapped up, I guess. I mean, it's wrapped up in the sense that they wrapped it up, but there's not a zero chance that we see him in the future. That's what I would say. But major spoiler warning, because I'm going to reveal what happens to him at the end of the book. So if you don't want to know that, I'll put a timestamp you can skip to. But at the end, Diogenes opts to stay in the alternate timeline and live his life there, because he feels like the 20th century New York world, he's just kind of, it has been ruined for him. It has ruined him, and he doesn't want to go back. So he wants to establish himself in a world that he feels like suits him. And it's just kind of like a really weird thing. And then at the end, there's this whole storyline with Hitler that just is super bizarre. And you were like, okay, this didn't need to be in here. It was almost like his ending was too finite and yet also a little bit ambiguous. And the whole Hitler thing was just, I don't know, it just wasn't on brand. I don't see him messing with historical timelines in that way. Obviously, he wouldn't want to live through world wars and stuff, but it was just like, I'm trying to think of how I say this. I feel like I'm talking really fast, and I'm trying to pace my cadence to be more relaxing, but when I start talking about books like this, it's really hard to do. I feel like it was meant to show how he is crafting the world to suit him, like he has always done. He's this elaborate mastermind puppeteer, and this is him doing that, but on a global scale. And it was just super weird to me. I was just like, this is ridiculous, and I wish it wasn't in here. So that is another criticism I have. I wasn't entirely satisfied with the wrap up to his storyline. I would have been fine if they had have just left him in like old timey world, because eventually he leaves New York and he like goes globetrotting. But it was just, the epilogue was just, I was like, no thanks. That's what I thought. I was like, this character deserved something else. And maybe we'll see him in the future. I hope that we do, if they continue writing books in this series. It seems very popular. So I hope that like somehow, some way, he comes back. Maybe we meet his children or his grandchildren, because now there's the possibility for that. That they could come back from the alternate timeline. It's a little weird because he's in an alternate like universe. So, but there is possible ways for him or his descendants to come back to like timeline 1, New York. But then it brings back in that whole sci-fi thing, and I'm not sure how I feel about that. I know that people thought it was really weird departure in the overall series, and I do agree it was very strange, and I'm not sure how much it brought to the overall series. I hope they just kind of leave that and move in a whole new direction, and we don't come back to that again. but outside of that, I think the wrapping up of Constance's storyline was good, and her relationship to Pendergast and her relationship to Diogenes, and kind of how they have settled that, how the dust has settled on that, has been good. I gotta go turn off my dehumidifier. Okay, I had a little bit of a moment there with my dehumidifier turning on and blowing the candles all over the place. And then my cat showed up and I had to get rid of him. So the way they wrapped up, kind of, they settled Constance's storyline. I think that was fine. I do hope that in the next books, the direction moves away from her. She's been the focus of a lot of the books in the series thus far. Obviously, Pendergast is the main focus, but the secondary focus has been on her through a lot of the storyline. And so I'm hoping now that Diogenes is kind of squared off in his own world, and her and Pendergast have kind of worked out whatever their relationship status quo is, that we move back into more stories that are kind of one-off singulars, or like two-offs, where we get more concise stories. The trilogies tend to be kind of long and drawn out and overly complicated, and I think as someone entering the series, it's kind of prohibitive for new readers if all of your books are so tied together. We need more books that are easier entry points. That's what I would say. And it seems like there's been a few. City of Endless Nights or Crooked River were kind of there in the middle. But I think we need more of those now that we've had this series of Bloodless, Dr. Lang, Vengeance. So that's kind of where I'm sitting in regards to the future of the series. What I'm looking for, what I'm hoping for is just like some fun new story. So one thing that I wanted to say, and when I did the overall series, there was a lot of stuff I had to cut out. I just filmed way too long. But one thing about this book was we get this bombshell of, and I don't think this is really a spoiler because it doesn't affect anything else in the series, but that D'Agasta's son is dead. And it just kind of came out of nowhere. And you were like, WTF? Like, where, what? We haven't seen this character for, like, we never really see that character, but he's mentioned in the abstract. And then all of a sudden he's just dead with no mention of him in between. Like, oh, D'Agasta has a son. And then all of a sudden, oh, now he's dead. And it feels like they just killed him off because maybe they were never going to come back to that character, or to like make D'Agasta's backstory a little bit more interesting, to give him a little bit more like oomph into his life. But he has a quite complex side storyline with his wife, so it doesn't make any sense that they had to like go back to his ex-wife and his kid to just drop this thing of his son being dead. It was just super weird and came out of nowhere. The other thing that I wanted to say, because now I'm just kind of talking about the whole series and stuff that's lacking from it, and I did mention this in the overall Pendergast series review, but like we see what happens with Albin, Pendergast's one of his twin sons, and his whole storyline, and like that ends. But then we have Tristram, and Tristram's kind of this hilarious character that just, like, I don't know, he just like tugs at my heartstrings because he's just kind of like this innocent, naive, optimistic character, and his name is just hilarious. When Pendergast was like, "Your name shall be Tristram." And I think it helped that I'm pretty sure that when I was first introduced to Tristram, it was an audiobook, so I heard his name rather than I read it. And I had to do a double take. And I was like, of course it would be some kind of oddball name because that's their naming tradition in the Pendergast family. But I don't know. I was just kind of like, where's Tristram been for the last 3 books? He's nowhere. He just like disappeared, and they're talking about the future and like what's going to happen with like Constance and Pendergast and the Pendergast family tree, and then no one says what's going on with Tristram. So hopefully we see more of Tristram come back. Maybe Tristram, maybe his madness gene comes into play. You know, they talk about the madness gene in the Pendergast family line, and maybe he's not so innocent. Maybe he takes a turn a la Albin, even though Albin kind of took a 180 turn in the end. Yeah, so I'm interested to see what happens with Tristram. Interested to see maybe if we ever see Diogenes come back or his descendants. I'm ready for a break from Constance, and I'm ready to see Cold Moon come back because he was a really fun and interesting character that had a nice kind of personality for Pendergast to play off of. Yeah, so I think there's a lot of ways the series can go in the future, so I'm interested to see what happens. I will say, I don't know if there's a new book in the works. I'm not like waiting on pins and needles to see what comes next, just because I feel like I've been drowning in this series for a year, and it's been nice to read some new books. My book haul came out already on the channel, and so I've gotten through a couple books, and so those reviews will be coming out next. And then my other box of books arrived, so I'll have those to show you. So I'm ready for a change. It's been nice. It was a great adventure. Yeah, so I don't know. I'd like to know what other people thought of the book, if they had the same criticisms, if they liked it, if they thought that they were satisfied with the ending, with kind of how the storylines wrapped up, what you're looking to see in the future, if you've read any books in the series, if you read this book. I hope that you didn't watch this and then it's spoiled the whole book for you. I think the ending of Lang's kind of story is a little bit up in the air, you know. It's one of those off-screen deaths that then comes back, and then it's a little bit off-screen again because he gets pushed back into the alternate reality. And so there is a potential for him. I guess I'm trying to remember. I think Diogenes was there when he got pushed back into the alternate reality, and so I think he really is dead. It's hard to remember now. But I mean, you never know, really, right? It seems like anything can happen in this world. How many times have we thought characters were dead and they weren't dead? So, yeah, I mean, that's it. that was Angel of Vengeance. It was, like many of the other books in this series, a wild ride and a roller coaster, and some good reveals, good use of like smart villains and gray characters. Really well done. Something I talked about, I remember saying in the Pendergast series 2, I think, it was that one of the books showed how smart Pendergast was, but also how dumb he was. Because, man, that boy is intellectually very smart, but like situationally very dumb. The choices that he makes, sometimes you're just like, they seem out of character for the established, how they have established him as being so smart and being kind of also like a bit of a mastermind, but not really. That he should be able to like see all of the chess pieces. Like he has this ability to pull himself out of a situation and see it from above, but it seems like that's never accurate, despite how accurate he thinks it is. And so it's weird because he's intelligent, but also dumb. I don't know. And so you're never quite sure. That probably sums up the whole series. You're never quite sure of what is happening and where it's going to go next. So that is Angel of Vengeance. Overall, good culmination of the stories it had to bring together, but also a little bit disappointing in some areas. Could have been longer, could have been a little more detailed, could have been a little more interaction of the characters between each other, and the endings could have been left a little more open. So that's my review of this book, spoilers included. I hope that anyone who read this book also liked it. Let me know your thoughts. And if it's worth doing reviews of books with spoilers included. Yeah. So thanks for joining me here tonight, and I'll be back soon with my next review, the first book of 2025. All right. Bye, guys.